tumbled over in a heap, and some tourist on a nearby table saw the blood. A child screamed. Lex fled, an innate sense of self-preservation making him flip the table aside as he dashed away. A third shot had splintered a corner of the wooden tabletop. Unable to help himself, he'd thrown a look over his shoulder as he sprinted toward the mouth of the nearest alleyway, toward the faint promise of safety. Tourists and locals stood frozen with horror, hands to mouths, faces lined with shock. The only ones who'd looked his way were a man and a woman of average height, their identities hidden beneath identical light-colored baseball caps and big black sunglasses that covered half of their faces. He glimpsed the dark, angular shapes of compact pistols hidden in their hands, and all the reason in him dissolved. Up came the oily panic, like a boiling floodhead. He'd raced through a narrow, airless passage full of stale odors, which spat him out on the Kibera Street, a few blocks north of the piazza. He'd followed the old road, moving without thinking, skirting around the dusty flanks of the church of St. Augustine. Rabat stood atop a hill, and there was a steady breeze through the medieval streets that plucked at his hair and pushed bits of litter along the gutters. On all sides, terraces of sun-bleached buildings crowded in on one another, most of them closed up for afternoon. Running on autopilot, Lex almost doubled back before he realized he was on the verge of making a fatal mistake. He staggered to a halt in the pharmacy doorway, trying to catch up with himself, concentrating on what he could remember about the town. He knew there was a coach terminus not far from here, where Rabat met the walls of Medina, Malta's ancient fortress capital. All he had to do was slip aboard a local bus and get away, lose himself among the other passengers. The rest he could figure out en route. For now, he was trying to concentrate on not dying. The red ruin of the Greek's face flashed up in his mind's eye, and Lex gagged as he tried to blot out the image. Nestor Kirkos was connected, and the man had enemies, he knew that. He wondered if maybe the man and the woman in the baseball caps had come to end the Greek's life for some infraction that he wasn't even aware of. Maybe they weren't interested in him at all. But then, reflected in the pharmacy's window, Lex saw an olive-toned face half concealed by dead black lenses on the other side of the street, and he knew that he was the real target. Kirkos and the bodyguard were just collateral. Their deaths had been the shooters clearing the field of anyone who could be a threat before turning on their true quarry. Lex slipped out of the shaded alcove and pushed through a group of aging English tourists coming the other way. Over their muttered complaints about his rudeness, he heard the low drone of a subsonic bullet, a split second before a sand-colored block in the wall near his head grew an impact crater. The tourists reacted with mild surprise at the sound of splintering rock, as Lex left them behind, hugging the yellow stone of the surrounding buildings, putting them between himself and the killers until he turned the corner. No sound. Whatever weapons the two assassins were using, they were practically silent. No one else seemed to be aware of what was going on. Lex moved as fast as he could without actually breaking into a run, afraid that giving in to the panic would result in his death. In his haste to escape, he had left his messenger bag behind at the cafe, but there was little in there that he couldn't replace. The most important thing, the invaluable thing, he had on him. The prize for which he had betrayed his comrades had not been out of his reach since he'd left Berlin. His hand twitched and tightened as this thought ran through his mind, and nervously, Lex ran his other fingers over the scars on his palm, picking at the old, healed wound. His right leg was starting to hurt, like it always did when he was stressed, but he pushed the phantom ache aside by patting himself down, taking inventory of what he still had on him in the pockets of his cargo trousers and hoodie. Not much. Adrenaline soured in his mouth, leaving a metallic taste. This wasn't like the kind of fear he was used to, the rush of speed that washed over his body when he base jumped or rode a curl on a surfboard. That he could manage, because in those situations Lex was always in control. This was raw and hard and overpowering, and he was struggling to keep his head straight. These people want to murder me. The reality of it finally hit him.